It's a running theme with the Florida government, giving itself direct powers of influence. And a new proposed law would give the province the ability to issue directives to police services boards. For more on how that would work, let's bring in Global's Isaac Callan at Queen's Park. So Isaac, the government hasn't really been abundantly clear here on how it would actually use these new powers.
Yeah, I don't direct the police. That's something you'll hear Premier Doug Ford and Solicitor General Michael Kersner say repeatedly, because it's essentially a tenet of our democratic system, right? The government comes up with laws and then police forces work out how to enforce them independently, which is why this law, or this proposed law, is raising so many questions at Queen's Park. To kind of explain a little bit of what the government is doing here, let's take a step back over how policing works. Officers in Ontario report up, obviously, through the police structure to the chief, and then the chief of each police force in Ontario reports to a police services board. That's a body which has municipal and provincial representatives on it, which sets the agenda for the police. They set the budget, they hold the chief accountable, and they also set the strategic plan. It's at that level that this proposed new law, if it passes, would allow the Ford government to get involved. It would let the Solicitor General set priorities for those police services boards. Here, in Michael Kersner's own words, is why he thinks that power is necessary.
What we want to do is we want to align the priorities of the police service boards across the province with the priorities of the government. And some municipal police service boards do a great job, and others kind of go it their own way. What we want to do is, for lack of confusion and enhanced clarity, say to police service boards across the province, these are the priorities of the government, and be aware of it and take that into consideration in the decisions you as a municipal police service board do. And that's very important.
Now, there's a few ways that Michael Kersner will be able to use these powers. They could be used to set priorities for all police service boards across Ontario. For example, they could all be told to focus on home invasions. They can also, though, be used at a more individual level. Toronto Police could be told to focus on hate crimes, and maybe a more rural municipality like Owen Sound could be told to focus on impaired driving. The Solicitor General's office says that this isn't directing police, essentially because of the number of steps in between. This will mean that Michael Kersner would write a directive to a police services board. The police services board would then include that directive in their strategic plan. The chief would then implement this strategic plan, and then officers would carry it out. So essentially, they're saying that there's so much distance between the Solicitor General and the officer that this isn't directing police. But you'll not be surprised to know, Colin, that at Queen's Park, people are suggesting that this could be blurring the lines in some way.
Right, and he seems to be formalizing, the Solicitor General, Michael Kersner, what he's already been doing, right? He's written to Toronto Police recently, suggesting he wasn't really pleased with how they handled some of the protests locally. Is that part of the equation here?
Oh, and that was a really big moment. If you talk to people both involved with policing and involved with government, they will tell you that the letters that Michael Kersner wrote to Toronto Police over how they'd handled a number of disruptive pro-Palestine protests caused a real tension. Toronto Police, I think, felt, at least in some cases, that the Solicitor General was putting pressure on them, and even people in government will tell you that that's caused a little bit of a rupture between the police and the Solicitor General's office. Again, his office says that this won't be used to direct police, but as with so many things like this, Colin, this law hasn't passed yet. We don't expect it to be passed until the fall, and the detail will most likely be in the regulation as to how much power the Solicitor General is actually going to have.
Details always come second in Ontario. Isaac Callan at Queen's Park, thanks so much.